We have breaking news on abortion rights in Florida, which will be a hot button issue come November election time. Let's talk about it. How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about Florida Supreme Court upholding the state's 15-week abortion ban, which will pave way to the 6-week abortion ban. And all of this is going to be on the ballot in November. Now, before we get to the news clip, let's back up and give a little bit of context. Now, in Florida, the actual time for abortion to cut off before any bills are passed recently was between 22 and 25 weeks. That is considered viability all over the nation. DeSantis passed a bill in 2022 that says we're going to cut it off at 15 weeks. Now, this didn't really affect most women that had abortions because they had them before the 15-week mark. However, in 2023, he passed another bill for 6 weeks to be the cutoff. Now, this is going to be a serious issue for a lot of women because they say that most abortions take place after that point. And some say women don't know if they're pregnant or not at 6 weeks. Now, I'm not a woman. I don't know how the body really works when it comes to that, if you know or if you don't know. So if you guys know, let me know in the comments, but that's what they say. Now, the Supreme Court upheld the 15-week cutoff. The 2023 6-week cutoff would only be able to go into effect if the first 15-week went into effect, and it'll happen 30 days after. You understand? So you have the 22 to 24 weeks. That's already standard. Then the 15-week, and then they give you a month to get ready for the 6-week. And again, this will all be on the ballot in November. If 60% of Floridians say they don't want this and they want it to go back to the 22 to 24 weeks, then it will be so. If they say they do want it, then it will be so. So it is what it is. Now, before I go any further, let's get into the actual news clip. If you want to see the clip in full without my commentary, link as always will be in the description. If you're on IG, visit a link in the bio, go to the corresponding article on the website. But without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
First here at 5, we begin with a news alert out of Tallahassee. The Florida Supreme Court has ruled on amendments to guarantee the right to abortion and to allow recreational marijuana here in Florida. The High Court approved both amendments to appear on the November ballot. Our political editor Craig Patrick is here now to explain the rulings and the impact this could have on the November election. Craig.
Well, bottom line, it means that Florida voters will decide whether to allow marijuana for recreational use, as a growing number of states have. That will be Amendment 3. And
now, as far as the weed, just as a side note, because it is mentioned at the same time as abortion, I hope they don't allow that to happen because it's a slippery slope. Once you allow weed and you take it away from the taboo area, you're going to just go downhill from there. It's going to be all bad, in my humble opinion. But let's keep on going.
And voters will decide whether to add the right to abortion in the state's constitution. That will be Amendment 4. Now, let's start with that abortion amendment, Amendment 4, and what that specifically means. Because for years, abortion in Florida had been legal until around 24 weeks. The governor and legislature first reduced that in most cases to 15 weeks, then passed another law dialing it back to 6 weeks. Well, that 6-week law has not yet kicked in, but after today's decisions, it will kick in 30 days from now. And then in November, voters will decide whether or not to override that 6-week restriction and take it back to 24 weeks, or what's called a point of fetal viability. That will require at least 60% support to pass.
And that is a really high margin to pass, 60%. Normally, when you're talking about voting, the majority wins. So if you have 50.1%, they win. But in this case, you got to have 60% of the vote. So that's a pretty high barrier. And I think that it's going to be pretty close. You'll be surprised, even in a red state like Florida and other parts of the country, a lot of women don't like this kind of stuff. You'd be surprised. A lot of conservative women don't like abortion restricting bills. A lot of conservative women do, but a lot of them don't. And you know already that a lot of liberal women do not like this at all. They want to have abortion up until the point of birth in many cases. But I digress.
The state attorney general tried to block this amendment on grounds that the wording and specifically the term viability would be confusing or misleading to voters. But in a 4-3 ruling, the court did not buy that argument and approved it to proceed.
Now, one thing that we got to look out for, there's going to be a ton of money dumped into Florida to block this from becoming a law of the land. They don't want this abortion restricting thing to become a law of the land. They don't want it to be 15 weeks or 6 weeks. They want it to go back to what it was, the 23, 24, 25 weeks. They want it to go back to that. So there's going to be a lot of money dumped into Florida. And I've told you guys, if you've been watching the channel for a while, I've told you guys that this cycle, 2024, is going to be crazy. Summertime is going to get hot in a variety of ways. But let's continue.
Same argument goes for the Amendment 3 to allow recreational marijuana in Florida. Florida currently only allows marijuana for medical use. If passed, this will allow adults 21 years or older to possess and use pot for non-medical personal consumption. The amendment, like all, requires 60% to pass. They all do. Florida Attorney General Moody also challenged this amendment, claiming that the wording could confuse voters as well. But we could tell the justices were disinclined to go along with that during the arguments in moments like this.
So help me understand what this does to inject confusion.
Because it uses a word, allows, that affirmatively
well, yeah,
suggests.
but come on. It also says applies to Florida law. I mean, like, we can't not read the context.
The court didn't say that language from the prior cases just barely passes muster, we'll let it go. It said that was the roadmap. 2 years later, we're here with virtually the same language.
In terms of the broader impact on the election in Florida, well, Democrats hope that it will bring more Democratic voters out to the polls, and there is some evidence to suggest it might, based on the results of similar amendments, referendums in other states.
The language is irrelevant here because they're going to pump so much money into it. They're going to make the message crystal clear to whoever needs to hear the message. The leftist groups, they're going to put out their message about weed and about the abortion. And then the conservative ones, same thing. So the language, that's just kind of a silly argument. At the end of the day, people who are voting in Florida will know full well what they're voting for after all the millions upon millions that be spent on this initiative get spent. They're going to know full well. All right. Anybody that's able to vote for the president, vote for the governor, etc., they'll know what these things mean when it comes time to vote.
And polling shows more Democrats favor recreational marijuana. In fact, both amendments than Republicans do. But keep in mind, with amendment campaigns, it can be easier to get out supporters than opponents. But on the other hand, in 2022, the issue of abortion did not have as much of an impact in Florida's midterms as it did in some other states. And of course, we have other issues, a presidential election that could drive turnout much, much more than these two amendments. And with so many other variables in play, it simply isn't clear how much of an impact either of these amendments or both of them could have on other races, especially some 7 months away from the election.
And Craig, what are the chances that either of these amendments could pass?
It looks as if it'll be close. Recreational marijuana, for example, again, needs 60%. UNF polling at the end of last year showed that it had 67% support with 60% needed. That is
really, that's very interesting. Very interesting. Times are changing.
Kind of close. Legal right to abortion, again, needs 60%. Same polling showed 62% support. So in both cases, above the threshold, but that's just one poll. We haven't.
Polls are pretty close. Polls are pretty close. So that's what's happening out there in Florida. The Florida Supreme Court allows the 15-week ban to go into effect, which prompts the 6-week ban to go into effect 30 days after. And I presume the 15-week ban goes into effect immediately, right away. And then the 6-week ban right after. It's going to be close. The polls could say one thing, and I think the polls might be kind of accurate right there. I think what he was talking about was support to enshrine abortion rights in the Constitution of Florida, which would repeal the 15-week and the 6-week and take it back to the 24. I think that'd be on the ballot. So we'll see how it goes. As I close, I want to say this. If it was up to me, if I could be a king and rule by fiat, I would just ban it unless you got life of the mother, things of this nature, you know, sexual assault, something like that. If you could prove it without a shadow of a doubt, without just accusing somebody of doing something, if somebody is accusing, they're convicted and there's evidence, that's one thing. But beyond that, nah. But also I understand this is going to be an issue that people don't agree with me on. People are going to say, well, look, man, my body, my choice. I could do what I want to do. And again, people may think it's just a leftist thing, a bunch of liberal women. A lot of conservative women want to have the right to abortion up until the 24 weeks. You'll be surprised. They may not tell you that publicly, but a lot of them support that behind the scenes. So although we're in a conservative state, we're in the red state, we got Ron DeSantis. Look at the support for weed. That's not a very conservative issue. So these things could pass. You could have legalized recreational weed in Florida, and also the abortion bills that DeSantis passed may not succeed, the 15 or the 6. And I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? What's your opinion about Florida Supreme Court's decision, and what do you think will happen ultimately in November? Again, the Supreme Court has basically temporarily allowed the abortion restrictions to go into place, 15 and then 6. But in November, they can be repealed by the voters. Whatever your thoughts are on the weed and abortion amendments, ballots, y'all let me know in the comments below. You guys know where I'm at. I am against weed becoming legalized, just recreational use. I'm not trying to smell weed at Disneyland. I'm not trying to have that happen, nor do I want to have the abortion go to 24 weeks or up to the point of birth. I don't want anything like that. I think the 15 weeks is more realistic. The 6 weeks is going to be kind of an issue. And if the Democrats are successful at driving the message about, hey, they want to ban abortion outright, 6 weeks, you're not even going to know about it. If they're able to drive the message home and really make that be a thing they spend a bunch of money on, it might not work. It might not make it, and they may repeal the 15 weeks as well. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.